Texas. So we hear Texas is bigger and better and all that stuff. The waters around Texas, though, those are something that I want to talk about, because what I know about Texas water, I don't know where I got this opinion at, but I do know that some others have the same opinion, that they're murky and rough. And I don't know, maybe that's not necessarily the case. Bryson, tell us about the areas that you fish, including the water. We want to know about the water clarity of the different substrates in and around Port O'Connor.
So in fact, we do have clear water in Texas. That'll blow a lot of people's mind.
Yeah, it does
And
mine.
we are sight fishing the flats for redfish and a couple other species. So to kind of paint a mental picture of where we're at, where Port O'Connor is located, we break the Texas coast down into three different sections. We'll have the upper coast, the middle coast, and the lower coast. So the upper coast might be the Galveston area. The middle coast, of course, is Port O'Connor, Rockport, Port Aransas, that some people might be more familiar with. And then the lower coast is Laguna Madre area, all the way down into Mexico. One thing that makes the Texas coast very unique is that we have a barrier island that runs all the way from Galveston down into Mexico. And that barrier island separates and protects our inland waters from the Gulf of America now.
Yeah.
And it creates some really good habitat for our flats fish. And Port O'Connor is located on a rectangular shaped peninsula on the southeastern side. So we pretty much have water that borders our whole peninsula to the east and to the west. If we were to run south in the boat from Port O'Connor, we would end up running into that barrier island. And that section of the island that we fish is called Matagorda Island. So we cover a lot of water fishing down out of Port O'Connor. And the easiest way to break that down is going to be to put it into three different sort of categories. And the first is what I would call the backcountry. So the backcountry is the inshore, the inland side of Matagorda Island. And it's not necessarily just a hard shoreline, like you might think of a beach. On the backside, there's mangrove mazes that connect large back lakes with smaller back lakes, with ponds and pockets. And it is quite literally an area that you can get back there, stick the push pole in the ground, and pull for miles and miles, and never even have to use the big motor if you didn't want to. So that's a very vast area. The second area that we like to fish are what I'd call the islands, which are between the backcountry and Port O'Connor, or the mainland. And these islands are different sizes. So some could be the size of the footprint of your house. Others could be the size of a football field. And a few of the other ones are really long that can go for miles. And what makes these unique is that you can run through, some are man-made, some are natural channels. And inside of these islands, you have really big flats and creeks. So you can pull those for quite a while. And then once you finish up, you run back around or pull an opposite way, fish a different area. And then the third area, and this is one of my favorites to fish, are what I would call either outside shorelines or maybe bay shorelines. And it is literally, if you were to look to the left of the boat where you're pulling, you'd see the shore. And then off to the right side would just be the wide open bay. What makes that area really cool is that you never know what you're going to see on the flat, because there's so much out in the bay that could just show up along the shoreline. So getting back to the clear water of Texas, we got to understand what makes our water dirty. So for a lot of the areas, at least inland, or just say trout fishing, for example, something that makes the water dirty is going to be a big rain that a tributary, might erode some dirt, dumps it in, and all of a sudden your water's dirty.
The same for everywhere there, though.
Yes.
Pretty much.
So we do have two tributaries, one to our west and one to our east, which is the Colorado River and the Guadalupe River. And even though those do dump into our body of water, they don't necessarily have the same impact that a small tributary into like a trout river might have. We're not really too impacted by that. But what we do get impacted by is we get impacted by the wind on mud bottom, so on a mud substrate. So we have four different substrates. Of course, we've got some mud, and we've got grass, we have shell, which are oyster beds, and then we also have sand. And so depending on where you're at in those areas that we fish, whether it's the backcountry that has generally more mud than some of the other areas, but it also has quite a bit of grass. Say that area might get kicked up, but it's not going to be the whole backcountry. It'll just be a general area, maybe a back lake or two. And of course, that dirty water might infiltrate a different area. But the islands between the mainland and the backcountry, for the most part, those stay generally fairly clear because they're a really good combination of seagrass, shell, and some mud. And then the outside shorelines, they're primarily seagrass and sand. And so you get these really hard transitions between the sand and the seagrass that the fish like to follow. And so as long as you're fishing on the protected side of the bay, you're not actually out in the waves. Those areas tend to stay really, really clear. The great news about fishing down here is that we can always find clear water, and the area is super vast. The backcountry that we can access from Port O'Connor is over 40 miles worth of water. And that's not including all of the flats and islands between the backcountry and the mainland.
Yeah.
So most people that come down to fish, they end up spending at least 2 or 3 days because there's so much water to cover, so many different areas to explore. You never know what the weather is going to be. And honestly, it just makes for a little bit more laid back feeling on the boat. It's okay to sit down for 10 minutes and, drink some water and chill out, as opposed to one day where you're just like, I got to stay up there and keep going and going and going. That's kind of a general overview about kind of where we're at and the type of water that we fish and, why we do have clean water.
I suggest that people take at some point, maybe not, obviously, if you're driving, don't do it, but take a look at the map and follow all the stuff that Bryson was just saying about the water. So I'm doing it right now as he's talking. I'm looking. There are a ton of places that if you get on Google and go into the satellite that I know have to hold fish. There's no doubt. It just looks too good not to. Even if it doesn't, it should. But there's a lot of good water on both sides there. So the beach side, you're talking about it. What color is the sand there? Is it white sand? Is it a little more darker?
It is white. It's not going to be quite as white as what we think of, like in the Florida Panhandle, Emerald Coast area.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it is fairly clean white sand.
Okay. Well, let's kick this thing off from high atop the world headquarters of Southeastern Fly. This is the Southeastern Fly podcast. Thanks for stopping by. Feel free to share this with your friends and your fishing partners. Hit the like, click the follow, sign up for the Southeastern Fly newsletter and get a jump on upcoming events and episodes. The newsletter is available wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. There's a link there. So who is our guest on this episode of Fly Fishing the Texas Coast? He's a Middle Tennessee native. I think I've known him since he was in high school, I believe. Pretty sure I have. I guess so. You've been fishing that long. You graced the cover of the Orvis catalog. Is there any truth to that?
That's true. Hate to admit it, but it's true.
He guides in Alaska in the summer for Rainbow River Lodge. The other seasons of the years, he's in Port O'Connor, Texas, which is what we're going to talk about today. He guides for redfish and other types of saltwater fish. Please welcome to the Southeastern Fly, the owner of Bryson Storie Fly Fishing, Bryson Storie. Bryson, thanks for stopping by.
Hey, thanks for having me. I've listened to the show for a long time, and it's an honor to be sitting here and chatting with you.
Well, I appreciate you listening to it. I think you and my mother may be the only two people that listen to it, but thanks.
Well, she and I both must have learned a thing or two here and there.
Funny story. She's texted me before and asked, like, what is this? I'm like, are you listening to this? She says, yeah. I'm on the email list. Yeah, I'm listening to it. So she doesn't know what we're talking about half the time, but I think she just likes to keep me in check, or she thinks she does anyway.
Some good motherly support there.
It is. It really is. So now we know the water was much clearer than I think, and Bryson actually sent me some videos this afternoon to show that, hey, dude, we do have some clear water down here, and it is clear. As a matter of fact, it's more clear than a lot of the trips that I've been to, Louisiana and Mississippi and Florida. So definitely different than what I thought about. I thought about Texas for sure. The area it's very diverse, all the different bottoms. Let's talk about the fish though. What are the different types of fish that we can find around Port O'Connor area of the Texas coast? Let's talk about that.
So redfish are our primary species that we target on the flats. On any given day, we might see singles or a group of fish cruising. You might find single fish tailing or schools of tailing fish. One of my favorites are the ones that are belly crawling. They're literally so far up shallow that their eyeballs are almost out of the water. And another one that's really cool, and we almost think of it more of as like a permit type activity, are redfish who will follow stingrays around. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
We did talk about watercolor. They can show up differently depending on the watercolor. So if we're on a bright green grass flat, they might be what we call a nuclear redfish. They're the easiest to see. They're just lit up,
Oh yeah.
super
Yeah.
bright. The fish that are on the sand are going to be more that silver color. And then if they are in the water that is a little bit more dirty, they might be like a pale yellow or an orange color. But what's really nice about the different water characteristics is that we fish is that even though the water clarity might be a little bit off, it actually gives us more cover. Kind of think about how if it's raining while you're deer hunting, it conceals you a little better. So
Yeah.
it might be a little harder to see the fish, but the fish aren't quite as wary of us and not necessarily leader shy. I'd say for our redfish shots off the boat, generally they're within 40 feet, if not 30 feet of the boat. So they're a fairly forgiving saltwater species to fish for. Not saying they're easy by any means, but generally they're a little bit more forgiving than, say, our bonefish or permit fishing. Another fish that we come in contact with on the flats are the black drum. So they're a cousin per se of the redfish. And identifying those guys, the redfish, they do have a big head and they sleek out down toward the tail. But those black drum, they're a little bit more round. They do kind of have almost like a tall forehead. Their mouth is on the bottom of their face, like a redfish. And the juveniles, they actually have black barring, black vertical barring up and down. And so it makes them a little bit easier to decipher between the redfish or the black drum, but they are awesome practice. It's not often we roll past them and don't, throw at them.
People poo poo the black drum too. And I'm like, no, we're fun. I mean, you get one every once in a while that just will not fight. It's like pulling a log. But most of the time they're gonna make big runs for a little while and you're gonna get a good tug and all that. So I'm like, no, let's don't. We got into a pod of them one time, or a pod. They filled the whole little bay that we were fishing. It was incredible how many were in there. And I didn't really want to leave. We left to go find redfish and we found one more redfish. But I was like, we could stay here and just mess with these things all day long. But anyway, there are three people on the boat and I got outvoted. So
If you find a tailing black drum at 35 feet, don't tell me you're not going to throw at it. Are you kidding me?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So they're a lot of fun. Another one that we'll see are the sheep's head.
Hmm.
We've heard them called the low country permit. Here we call them the Texas permit.
Yeah,
Not necessarily that they cruise the same way that a permit does, but one, they're really spooky. They're hard to get close enough to actually get a shot. When you do get the fly there and they actually are interested, which a lot of times doesn't happen, they'll inspect the fly for a long time, like a permit, before they eat it. And then on top of that, when they do eat, you can't necessarily feel them, similar to maybe carp fishing, where you got to watch for that tail flick or a gill flare. And if we do finally get them to eat, they have these big old teeth, almost human-like teeth that they use to
yeah,
crush crustaceans and barnacles and things, so they can be hard to hook after we've done everything else just right.
exactly. Yeah. And they do that. They have the funkiest teeth, don't they?
You pull them out of the water, they look like they're smiling at you.
Yeah, yeah,
We do see some speckled trout around. Texas is known for having some really, really big speckled trout. They're not necessarily ones that we sight fish for. I think they might do some of that further south in Texas. But when we do catch them, a lot of times it's that we're blind casting. We're maybe moving 50 yards over here, there. It's like, hey, let's just make a couple casts. And sure enough, you end up hooking a trout. And then the last one that we really, really enjoy targeting are the jack crevalle, or if you're a native Texan, you call them the jackfish. And so the jack crevalle that come in into our area is more of a summer, late spring or early summertime fish, and they typically get here, say late May, 1st of June, and run through early October. And those fish are moving in through our jetty and Pass Caballo, and through our big jetties. And primarily on an incoming tide is when they really seem to chase a lot of bait fish up to the surface. and it's like taking 100 bowling balls and dropping them in the water. And so this is a very fast-paced run and gun style fishing where we have birds circling overhead. You run 100 yards over here, and then you're throwing in them, and then they go back down, and you run over here, and you're throwing at them, and eventually end up hooking up. The best way to do it is just setting up upstream in the current and drifting down into those fish. Seems like a lot of times if you're a little patient, a little more patient for them, ends up paying off. But those are fish that are going to be in that 20 to 25 pound plus range. They're big and they fight hard.
It's a big fish.
They're
Yeah.
related to the giant trevally, which is a famous fish nowadays. And so the lightest rod we use is going to be a 10 weight for those. And there's nothing like seeing a 20-pound fish blow up on the top water. So they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The type of fish where you go and hook one or two, and then it's like, all right, guys, you want to get another one? They're like, no, let's go red fishing. We're done.
Yeah. It's like a big bluegill, oversized saltwater bluegill.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention about the redfish, and something that I've kind of picked up on, been taught, and I relate it again to deer hunting. One of the Middle Tennessee Fly Fishing Club members that kind of taught me how to deer hunt. He said that deer have three different senses that can spook them. One of them is going to be sight; they can see you. One of them they can smell you, and they can hear you. So as long as they don't put two of those together, you're okay. They can see me, but as long as they don't hear me or smell me, we're good. Don't move. I think that redfish are very similar. They can see you. Think of, shadows. They can hear you. Now, I've never seen a fish with ears, but if you slam the cooler, drop your pliers on the boat, they're going to know. And then the feel is the biggest one. And so we can be really silent in the skiff, but every time I push that pole down in the ground and shove that boat forward, there's always a little bit of wave coming off. And so what we try to do is minimize anything else that's going to spook that fish. So we just always expect that, hey, the fish probably knows that we're here. And so it's not that, hey, we have to be super quiet. But when we do see the fish, it's like, hey, let's just keep our feet planted and not like scooch our feet at the last minute. 'Cause all of a sudden he felt us and now he heard us, boom, he's out. So just a little something else to keep in mind when you're red fishing. And it's kind of related to deer hunting, and it makes sense in my mind.
I don't know why that wouldn't be true for all fish, honestly. Trout, freshwater as well.
Yeah.
These folks that Eurofish, I mean, they're standing basically on top of the fish a lot of times. A lot of times. The other day, I put a fly on and just threw it in the water, for the guy. I said, okay, tie this on. Okay, snip it. Just tossed it over in the water. And I was just about to say, hey, just cast right down there. And he said, wait a minute, there's a fish looking at it. So you've got to be kidding me. I mean, I didn't throw it far. It was under the oar, basically.
I think there's days where we give fish way too much credit, and then there's days where we don't give them enough credit.
That's so true, Bryson, for sure.
They are masters of their domain, and I'm always just like, hey, you know what? Let's go catch one that's hungry.
Yeah, and hunger, that kind of leads us into the next topic that I want to talk about is we know the fish now. We know that there's redfish, black drum, jacks, and sheep's head. We need to get a jump start on the types of food they eat. And we'll talk about flies. We'll move into that just in a minute. But Bryson, tell us about the food and the different water types that you described in that first question. Tell us about the food that's in those different areas, or is it the same?
Yeah, so our three primary food sources for these fish are going to be shrimp, crabs, and bait fish. And so we can break shrimp down kind of into two categories. We've got brown shrimp and white shrimp. And from what I understand is that the brown shrimp will anchor on the mud, and the white shrimp will more anchor on the grass or inhabit maybe the spartina or cord grass that's in the area. And it's not like you can necessarily see a little, half-inch long brown shrimp anchored down there on the mud. But every now and then when you're pushing along and you stick the pole in the water, you look back there and you'll see a shrimp come up and there's no grass around. Say, oh, maybe it's a brown shrimp. And then you get into the grassy areas and you kind of take your push pole and stick it over along the edge. And there's some, they look white. They look like white shrimp that come out. So those are the two different shrimp food sources. They do spawn at different times throughout the year. And it seems like in the spring, I believe there's like some brown shrimp. Once you get into the warmer summer months, it's like some more white shrimp. And then I'm gonna say it's followed by more brown shrimp. I don't know exactly. But they are at different times of the year. So, which is good, keeps the food source plentiful. When it comes to bait fish, it's a very lump sum, it's a group category. We have tons of mullet. We have glass minnows, mud minnows. You could keep going down the list. I don't necessarily focus in on those as much as I know that the redfish eat mullet and all these different minnows, but most of the time my crab or my flies don't necessarily, I don't throw too many bait fish patterns. I have some other flies that I'm a little bit more confident in. I do throw bait fish sometimes, but something notable about our bait fish here is the mullet. And sometimes you will get into an area where there are literally so many mullet, it can be hard to find redfish. Another thing that I've started to notice is that when we do get into the areas that have just a straight mud bottom, there's no grass. If there's a lot of mullet that are boiling in that area, they'll be the ones to turn up the dirt, and there's no wind or there's no, water coming in, nothing like that. So sometimes the mullet can actually make fishing a little bit tougher, but it is always good to know that there are bait fish in the area.
Are those mullet? Are they those big mullet or like finger mullet? What are they? The bigger ones?
All of them. Yeah, we have finger mullet, and then sometimes you'll be pulling out there and you'll see a 25-inch mullet that you swear is a redfish. You're like,
Yeah,
man,
right. Okay.
it's bigger than half the redfish we've seen today.
But we know he won't eat.
Yes. The third are going to be the crabs. And even though we don't see many as we're pulling along in the water, other than really, really big, eater-sized blue crabs, we might find them when the fish comes into the boat and they might spit up crabs. Sometimes they could be as small as, say, like your pinky fingernail or half the size of a dime, even. Other times they could be, as big as your thumbnail, maybe even a little larger. And so, yeah, those are kind of our three food sources: the shrimp, bait fish, and crabs in our area.
So when you were talking about the shrimp spawning, and forgive me, I'm kind of going back to crawfish around here because I'm on a little bit of a crawfish kick, which is a whole other story. Are the shrimp changing their color, their size, their shape, or anything when they're spawning, or do you know?
I am not sure about changing colors when spawning. I do know it can take like 2 to 3 weeks for those small shrimp. We're talking small, like really, really small. It can take 2 to 3 weeks for them to grow into the size where the redfish are actually interested in them. And I'm guessing just because of what fish have thrown up on the deck of the boat, most of the smallest shrimp that I've seen come out are about half an inch long. So I'm guessing at about half an inch is when those fish really start to key in on those shrimp.
So that makes you wonder, should I size down on the flies, or
Right?
are they still looking for something
They
meaty?
got to be able to see them. It kind of freaks me out throwing something that's half an inch long for a big old redfish. But I mean, if they're eating it,
Yeah. Yeah, why not?
yeah.
I don't know. It seems like some of the redfish flies, and I tied some big ones actually yesterday, and talked to Richard Schmidt about them because we're going down there again here in a little bit. And he said, if we're going out to Chandelier Islands, yeah, you'd want something big and white like that. If we're coming in, you may want something a little smaller. I had this whole conversation on the boat the last time of, well, how small do you actually go? Like a crazy Charlie can be pretty dang small, really. And I mean, they're eating bonefish are eating them. So why do we think a redfish always has to eat purple, always has to have rabbit strip and have a big fuzzy head on it with big eyes?
Yeah.
The big eyes I get.
There was a time last year we were finding some fish on some sand flats. They were being real picky and they wouldn't let us get close. So the angler that I had, he's a good angler. He could probably throw 70, 80 feet of line. We ended up running like a 14-foot leader down to 10 pound. And we threw like some little bonefish flies. And the fish would just slowly move towards it and just inch over and inch over. And I mean, they'd fall at 30, 40 feet, just a very slow strip. And we ended up catching them. But yeah, throwing those big crab and shrimp patterns at them, the big stuff that we normally throw, was not getting it done. So yeah, I think there is a time where, sizing down for those fish makes a really, really big difference.
You have to be out there enough to know that the big flies aren't working. Like you have to have enough shots to go, okay, this is not working. It wasn't just that one or two fish. It's not working.
That's a tough one to put together.
It is,
Just
isn't it?
like we were talking about, like, okay, was it that the fish rejected the fly or did he feel the boat coming closer to him, and then all of a sudden something wasn't right. Maybe he saw a shadow or the fly was moving
Yeah.
toward him. And those were two of the things that turned him off, versus was it actually a happy feeding fish that truly rejected the fly?
Yeah. Or is he just so full he doesn't really want anything else? But maybe instead of a filet mignon, maybe okay, a piece of something the size of a popcorn I could probably stomach.
Yeah, how about Oreo cookie?
Or an Oreo cookie. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We got into speaking of stuff to eat, and I'm still reeling from it. I've been not eating quite as many sweets and stuff, but my wife and I went out to eat tonight and got in Publix and got some candy corn, and I'm just like, because three handfuls. I'm talking handfuls too. I'm not talking toddler handfuls. I'm talking big handfuls of it. Now I feel like crap because of the sugar and stuff. But I love candy corn. I know that that's some people don't like candy corn, but it's 100% sugar pretty much with some food coloring in it. It's bad for you, but it tastes pretty good.
I think relating those human-like qualities to fish, some people like it, some people don't, but I think it does help us wrap our head around, why things happen the way they do with fish.
A lot of hypotheses that you could connect between people and fish. Who knows how true they are, but it gives you something to talk about in between the last one and the next one. So,
Yeah.
so we're already kind of moved into flies, and I want to talk about the flies. So we know the water types, we know the fish that call that area home. Tell us about the flies that you use and if you imitate that food in the water or not. I know we kind of touched on that, but let's move into that a little deeper.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to flies, something that I have to talk about is kind of the order of importance when it comes to the keys to catching fish. And if any of my guide friends or previous guests that have fished with me are listening to this, they're probably rolling their eyes and they're like, oh my gosh, here he goes again. But there's three keys. The number one, and you know this one, I've heard you say it, is you got to fish where the fish are. If we're not fishing where the fish are at, there's a good chance we're not going to catch anything. That's the difference between sight fishing versus blind casting. We're already eliminating the factor of, oh, maybe there's just not fish here to eat my fly. So number one, fish where the fish are. Number two is presentation. When it comes to like trout fishing and some of the stuff that we do in Alaska, we might be actively sight fishing for a feeding trout in a lane, and we're getting a really good drift, which is a big part of presentation. But another factor of presentation is the weight. And so we add another BB split shot on there and first cast, boom, we stick the fish. So presentation, and then after that is our fly choice. And so I kind of think about it with redfish is, yeah, we could be sight fishing for a redfish with a live shrimp on a circle hook. And if we plop that shrimp right on the fish's head, they're probably not going to eat it, even though that's exactly what they want. So to break it down a little bit further, when I think of flies, I kind of have like two different categories. One is going to be weight, and the other one's going to be color or profile. So when it comes to weight, I think of that one being a little bit more important because that falls under presentation, not necessarily the fly. And so we have lightweight. I just think of lightweight and heavyweight, or lightweight and medium, and then maybe some really heavy stuff just in case. And so we're talking bead chain eyes or like the medium lead dumbbell eyes. The part of what goes into deciding do we throw the lighter weight versus the heavier weight isn't necessarily just the water depth. A lot of times it rolls around to how far are we able to see these fish? How far away from the boat can we see them? If it's a nice clear day, there's not much chop on the water, water clarity's good, say we can see them at 60 or 70 feet approaching, we can throw a lighter weight fly because we can lead that fish further and we can allow it time to sink into the zone. And of course, I'd much rather throw a lighter weight fly whenever possible. But there are plenty of days when we have some overcast or a fish in water that's not quite as clear as some other places. And all of a sudden, our ring of visibility around the boat goes from 60 feet to 30 feet or 20 feet really fast. And so even though, say, we're still fishing a foot of water, if that fish is closing that 20-foot distance really quick, we might only have one shot to get that fly in front of the fish. So therefore, I might opt for something heavier to be able to get down to that fish. It breaks my heart seeing a really well-placed fly in front of a fish and the fish swimming underneath it and never knowing it was there. It breaks my heart. So we've talked about weight, which is really important. The other part is going to be the colors. I think of light colors or natural colors, your tans, your light browns, And then there's dark colors, of course, are black and purple.
Yeah.
When it comes to the type of flies that I like to throw, if you were to look in my fly box, you'd say, this guy has no clue. He has every fly under, under the surface of the sun. How does he know what to choose? And yeah, you got 200 flies and you throw about half a dozen of the same patterns that you always throw.
Right.
I think of something that's crabby shrimpy. So one of my favorites and my confidence fly is just a black EP crab about the size of, I don't know, a quarter or the size of a bottle cap. And I do like to tie a tail off of it, whether it's marabou if you want to keep it simple, or you could use some type of synthetic fiber that's, an inch and a half or 2 inches off the back. And that way I can fish it like a crab, where it's going to sink down to the bottom. It's got some legs. Or if you think that the fish are, blowing up some shrimp along the shoreline, you can fish it a little quicker. And it gives the imitation of both. I always think of cheeseburger pizza when it comes to these type of, maybe we'll call them an attractor fly,
Yeah.
because
Right.
it's not an exact imitation like we see some of these permit flies nowadays that are just, I mean, if you were to put it next to another crab, it'd look exactly like it. But when you think of cheeseburger pizza, we all like cheeseburgers, we all like pizza. It's not necessarily something you see going together, but if I handed you a piece, you'd probably take a bite. They know what a shrimp looks like, they know what a crab looks like, they love both of them. So why not eat a shrimpy crabby fly? That's how I think about it. Most of the sizes that I fish are going to be 1/0 is probably about the biggest I go here in Texas. Most of the time they're in that like 1 to maybe even a 4 during the warmer months, unless it's real cold like January or February or early March. I'm sticking with those larger sizes. If it's cold though, I'm probably going to drop down to like a 6 or an 8 and throw more of those like bone fishy style flies. If the water is off colored, even just slightly, I almost always go with the purple and black. Whether the fish want the purple and black or if they want the olive or the tan, it becomes a personal preference and something that I'm confident in, which is my number 4. The fourth key to success is confidence in the fly that you're throwing. If you're throwing something that you enjoy throwing and you feel like the fish are going to eat it, you're just going to end up having more success.
People fish better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the other flies I like to throw, the redfish crack, or maybe it's called a cracklin. It's kind of a shrimp fly. It's got an all around profile. It's kind of bulky on the front. I think it helps push a little bit of water. There's always the spoon fly that can be the meal ticket some days. If you want to get into that. Yeah, it's kind of a general rundown on what our flies are like and what I like to fish down here in Port O'Connor.
So go back to this crab that you were talking about with, you said marabou.
Yeah,
What is that all about?
we tie it kind of like a merkin or an EP crab, so it's real flat on the shank of the hook. And hopefully we can get that fly to ride hook point up so it doesn't catch quite as much grass. But then having that tail that comes off the back of the crab, an inch and a half or 2 inches, kind of elongates it. And so whether it looks like a claw sticking up or if it just has more of the profile of a shrimp that's kind of long and skinny, we could fish it both ways. And when I'm tying that stuff in, we're doing a cross, I guess, an X wrap and putting, 4 or 5 pieces of that EP on the hook shank.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Because I've been working with ostrich hurl for tails and stuff. It comes in all kinds of colors, and I've got a drawer full over there. I like it because it's lighter. You don't have we're talking about throwing a light fly, and I've caught some really nice fish on it. And I just wonder what it would be like in the salt water on something like that, just a tail.
It looks really good. If you're to look in my box, you'd see a couple.
Oh, do you? Okay.
It breathes well.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
flies, if you get too much bulk on them and put bead chain eyes on, they still don't sink. And you're like, oh man, now I got a floating crab.
Right. Yeah.
But that ostrich hurl, it moves really well in the water, and you can put just the lightest amount of weight on there, and really it can be a super productive, like shallow water or deep water fly if you put more weight,
Yeah.
but it moves well.
Yeah.
I think the saltwater, some of the ones that I've tied with like the black or the purple ostrich hurl, the saltwater will start to bleach it. The black ends up turning blue,
Yep.
which I don't think's a bad thing. We do have blue crabs in the area, so I know they've seen some blue crabs around.
Yeah. I've noticed it over time, even in fresh water, it starts bleaching. I don't know if that's salt or sun or what it is, but I know here it'll also bleach it out a little bit. And
Oh.
there's probably some on the dash of my truck that are, used to be black and they're probably white now. So I don't know if that's or whatever natural color an ostrich is. I guess I don't even really know. So, so I like talking about the flies and the sinking. Are you jigging flies a lot, or are you just stripping? How are you doing that?
Kind of has to depend on what the fish's attitude is. I want to get a reaction out of the fish, whether it's positive and we get the fish to look at it and hopefully and eat, or even if the reaction is negative and the fish spooks because we stripped the fly into them or they spook because they didn't necessarily like the fly. I want to get some type of reaction. And so we can get into like, do we, cast it, of course, beyond the fish and then like strip it a couple times, and whereas crabs will dive to the bottom, we get them interested and then just let them eat it on the fall? Or do we take our chance and we fish it really fast in front of the fish? The one thing that I run into quite a bit is when we are fishing some of these shorelines, is that say the shoreline's 30 or 40 feet off to one side of the boat, and we're in a foot and a half of water and it slopes up to 6 inches along the shoreline. On the other side of the boat, it slopes off 2 and 3 feet of water. You kind of got to pick your poison on what weight fly you want to throw. Do we throw a heavier one that we know is going to get down in front of those fish who we might see off in the deep water? Then on the flip side, we're going to have to fish it really fast across that shallow grass if we see a fish. Or vice versa, you throw your lightweight fly and then it doesn't necessarily get down to the fish in time on the other side of the boat. So, and a lot of times it becomes angler preference at that point. I'm like, guys, I know this fly's working, the black crab's working. Do y'all feel more comfortable throwing a lighter weight crab, or do y'all want to stick with the heavy one and fish it faster? And really, it's kind of up to angler preference. Because at the end of the day, if they're confident in what they're fishing, they're going to fish it better.
Yes. So I would always rather fish skinnier water with lighter stuff, but that's not always where they are. I mean, how many times have you been cruising the shore or up into some small islands and stuff, and you're cruising left, looking at the shore, looking at the shore. You look over to the right. Oh well, there's four of them.
It happens a lot.
Right? Yeah. You can't see all the fish every time, and then you got to try to pattern them out. And what are they doing now? Where are they sitting? Then into the grass. It really is like a puzzle fishing out there.
It is a huge puzzle. It really is.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, try to keep it as I'd say keep it as simple as possible.
Yes. The fly technology nowadays is getting more and more, and it's getting winter, so I'm not going to be out as much. So I'll start tying. Our guy that does our taxes is like, "What are all these materials for?" It's winter time, dude. I'm trying to stock up on, get ready for next summer, so I'm not tying at 4 o'clock in the morning.
What is a grizzly saddle hackle patch, David?
Yeah, right. Exactly. What is that? Grizzly saddle? So you're saddling up a grizzly, but what's the hackle part? Yeah. So, no, speaking of grizzly, so wherever you've been, it's made an impact on your life. And same with all of us, everybody listening here. Not just the type of water, different types of water, but the environments around you, the people is always a big thing. And we talked about one of those people that, before we push record here, but you've been to a lot of places in a short period of time, including your time spent in Alaska. Tell us about how Alaska and Texas, as well as all the other places, have impacted you.
I think we got to go back in time to like, at least for me, to like really wrap my head around, where all I've been and what I've done and that kind of thing. But to go back in time to the Middle Tennessee Fly Fishers Club there in Middle Tennessee, I think my parents and I joined that when I was 11. And so through that club, I was able to meet a lot of people that honestly really cared. Of course, they cared about fishing, so they were part of the club. But I think the underlying message was that there were people there that took me under their wing and taught me a lot of different things, whether it was just a simple trick for casting, or how do we, make your flies better on the vise, or, deep stuff like topics about life. So I was a member of that club, through middle school and high school. So I joke that a lot of my friends growing up were, gentlemen with bass boats and deer leases, not necessarily kids my age.
Right.
So it was a really good experience there, and so I've got a big shout out to Middle Tennessee fly fishers.
Good group of guys.
I don't think I'd be where I'm at today without those people there. And so moving on to like Alaska, I started in Alaska my freshman year of college. And so I've worked for three different lodges now. This past season was my 10th year guiding up there. And each year I've been so blessed to be a part of a team that it really has the mindset of how do we love on people and how do we take care of people? And also how do we take care of people on our team, not necessarily just the guests that come through the lodge. And those people have shared with me tips, tricks, information on one, of course, on like the fishing and fishing guide side of things, but also meeting other people my age that are, we're living this type of lifestyle, together more or less. Got to add in there the employers that like took a risk on me, especially like my first year going to Alaska. Very much a greenhorn. I had guided a little bit, and had taken people fishing and that kind of thing, but relatively not much guide experience. And so the head guides there and the head guides along the way that have really, helped me develop, on the water and in real life. And then moving to Texas, the people at Tailwaters Fly Fishing and the community of fishermen in Texas are genuinely very welcoming people. And on the Texas coast as well. There's a stigma with saltwater guides that, they're very territorial. And I think that there are definitely areas where that's a thing. And I totally understand where they're coming from as well. But the guides in the areas been genuinely very, very welcoming. And yeah, so what I've really learned is it's like the team of people that have been around me and have wanted to see me succeed. And I could not have done anything that I've done without all these people, and have just been so blessed to be able to get to travel and go to some of the places and meet all the different people that I've met. A lot of them become lifelong friends. I got to mention, I met my wife guiding in Alaska as well. She also guided for the same lodge that I worked at. I think that was 4 years ago. And yeah, so we became close friends, coworkers before, anything ever serious took off. And there's a poem I read, it was a long time ago. It was called The Bridge Builder. And it is about a gentleman that crossed this deep, dark chasm as it goes in the poem, and he gets to the other side, and he avoids danger. And when he gets to the other side, he builds this bridge. And someone asked him, "Well, you already made it to the other side. Why'd you need to build a bridge?" And he said, "It's for someone else that comes along the way, so their path will be easier than mine was." And that really like hit home with just the people that I met at the fly fishing club and the community of fishermen in Tennessee, as well as the people I've met in Alaska and now here in Texas. And so there's not really a way to measure it, but I always want to make sure that if there's a way for me to be a bridge builder for someone else, whether it's simply showing them how to tie a loop knot, or if they're serious about wanting to go guide in Alaska and, kind of walking them through the ins and outs of what that's like, so that's kind of what, short story long.
No, that was really
kind of
good.
how it's impacted my life. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, at least to me, there's not a better place to really get to know and love on people than, sharing a very small boat or wading in a river, or floating in a 10-foot raft with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, you get to know people.
Yeah.
You get to know people in one trip. You know them more than you would working with them for probably a year or 6 months or whatever.
I totally agree. And there's something so natural about being out on the water that people generally let their guard down and, allow for some really deep conversations. And it's a really cool experience getting to share this big playground that we've been blessed enough to be a part of, and just getting to see it with other people. I think that's one of my favorite parts about even guiding, getting to witness them witnessing that.
There's been times this year I can think of a couple trips. One was a younger kid saw muskrat, and he was just like, "We got to investigate this,"
That's
which was
awesome.
great, and we did. Yeah, and then we there's some raccoons that hang out down on one of the rivers that I fish, and another guy, older guy, he said, what's that raccoon doing? And I said, he's just waiting for us to come by. And I said, we used to, it's not the same one, but I had a young lady on the boat. She said, can I throw that raccoon a donut? Because we always have powder donuts. I was like, yeah, sure, throw it out there. Dude, the rest of that summer, that raccoon was out there.
Uh-huh.
Every time we'd come
He
by.
was so disappointed too. No more powdered donuts.
Yeah, and I mean, other boats would go by there. I'm sure he's like, "Hey, dude, wait a minute." But anyway, you're right. You get to share stuff, wildlife, and talk about the fish, and people, especially the newer folks, they want to see the fish and learn about it, and you get to teach about it. Here's, or throw over there. We're throwing over there because that water's moving a little bit. It's got a drop off right there. Oh wow, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, this is the 100th time I've been down the river this year, so yeah, kind of. I kind of know that drop off's there. It has never changed in 20, 15 years. It's still there somehow.
Yeah.
But, to them, it's brand new.
Yeah.
So you still have to keep some enthusiasm about it.
Yeah, that definitely is something that, I was chat with the other guides in Alaska about is that, yeah, we've been on this river so many times this summer, but even the last week of the season, these people might be seeing this for the first time. And it is so cool to get to see what we see every day through fresh eyes. And it just kind of reminds you that like, wow, what a cool place we're at.
Yeah.
Even though it's like a daily routine, it's a really, really special area.
Still one of the greatest jobs. Yeah, it really is. I love to be out there. Let's talk about Alaska. I want to talk about Alaska. I know it's got a variety of fish that come and go, and the landscapes. It's like a whole other state out there. Uh, but I want to talk about a day in the life, but I also want to can you get us there
Definitely.
and then kind of take us through what happens and then a day in the life of an Alaska fishing guide, kind of if you could work that in there, that'd be awesome.
You got it.
I want to hear this.
You got it. So getting to Alaska is the first challenge. It's not necessarily the easiest place to get to. So say we're taking off out of DFW. Most people are familiar with that airport. Leave from DFW, you might get a straight flight to Anchorage. You might have to find a connection somewhere. But you get into Anchorage and then you take a 10-minute car ride over to a small private airfield where you would take a small, we're talking like a 10 or 12 seater small commercial flight about 200 miles southwest of Anchorage. So it turns in, it's like an hour to an hour and a half plane ride, depending if your plane's faster or slower than another.
Exactly.
From there, you'll land at a village, whether it's Iliamna or Pedro Bay, kind of depending on, at least for the lodges that I've worked for. Those are the hubs. They're going to be smaller villages. And from there, you would get shuttled over by van to a small lake where there's an airplane waiting for you. And this is an airplane on floats. And then it's a 20-minute ride over to the lodge. So there are literally no roads that connect the lodge to anything else. Everything that goes to the lodge, whether it just be boat motors or it is the big, 20-foot timbers used to build the lodge or windows, it all comes in by a 16-foot jet boat from the lake, or it gets flown in by a de Havilland Beaver, which is like the workhorse of Alaska, an airplane that was built in the 50s and early 60s. So that's how you would get there. It is very remote. And then the first thing that people notice most of the time is you're like, holy cow, how do we have like a 4 or 5 star lodge out in the middle of nowhere? And that's where, everything has to come in by boat or plane. So our season runs for 4 months, June through early October. So that's about 17 weeks. And people stay for 6 days and 6 nights. So we fish for 6 days out of the week. And so during those 6 days, most of the time, you're going to go to a different place every day. Rainbow River Lodge, where I've worked this past year, is located on the Copper River. And a neat fact about that is that it was the first designated Blue River trout fishery in Alaska. And so we've got jet boats there at the lodge. So one of the days you might hop in the jet boat, go trout fish up the river. Another day we might load up in the airplane and either do a walkway trip a couple miles of a river. We might also take a raft and a frame with us, and we'll blow up a raft and float 5 to 10 miles of water, depending on what river we're fishing. Or we might hop in the plane and get dropped off at a couple jet boats that are staffed somewhere on some crazy river somewhere. So it's a very diverse fishery in the locations that we fish. I believe we have about 25 different bodies of water or different areas that we fish throughout the 4 months. And of course, that gets narrowed down depending on what the season is and what fish are in and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of different waters to fish. It's very diverse species wise. Of course, a lot of people come through the rainbow trout, and that's generally our primary focus there at the lodge. But we also can fish for pike, grayling, dolly varden, Arctic char, and four of the five species of salmon. We don't necessarily do much king fishing from our lodge. It's a long float plane ride away, and we'd rather get into like the smaller, clear waters and sight fish for trout or go chase silver salmon.
Yeah, right.
So it's a really diverse in the way that you fish and what you can catch. It does change quite a bit from June through September. As a guide, we get to see 3 different months. So we get to see spring, summer, and fall. And by the time mid-October rolls around, we're looking to get out of there because the weather's starting to change and ready to get back to some warmer weather. A day, so I'll kind of run you through like what it just a general day looks like.
Yeah.
Most time we get up at least, I would say before the sun comes up, but in June and July the sun is always up. So we get up,
Exactly.
finish getting the rest of our stuff together in the morning, depending on where we're going. Throw on my waders, run down to the lodge with my gear. I'd grab some breakfast and throw it in what I call a wader burrito, which is whatever the breakfast is, roll it up in some aluminum foil, and it goes in the waders above the wading belt. And then take off, run down, load up the airplane with, whether it's just my gear or if we're taking rafts or, we need to take fuel for the boats that we're running. After we get the airplane loaded up, eat my burrito, and then hop in the airplane. Could be a 5 minute plane ride, could be about 25 minutes, so like the furthest place we go, maybe 30, but it's a pretty short plane ride. And then we'll either blow up the rafts or we'll take off wading or in the jet boat, fish for 8.5 hours. And then at the end of the day, there's airplanes sitting there waiting on you, and you hop back in, go back, unload, take the waders off. We had our little golden retriever in Alaska this year, so let him out. He just turned a year old, so we had to get his crazies out at the end of the day.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so at that time, start to get ready for the next day. So that's like cleaning out my little Yeti sidekick that I use. It's like my day pack for gear because it gets very disorganized with all my stuff on the water. Yeah, you know how it goes. If you
Yeah.
go 3 days and haven't organized it, whoo, it's a scary dark hole.
Oh, it's awful.
So get that
Yeah.
organized, dry some flies out. If we're throwing beads, maybe paint some more beads. We pre-tie a lot of our rigs that we put our beads on. That way it cuts down on waiting around time on the water when we break off. So get all that good to go, run down, have dinner. During dinner is when the mirror on the wall, the board goes up and we figure out what guests are going to what river and what guides are going where. And then we'll go chat with our guest about what the next day looks like in terms of weather and if we need to wear our, extra base layers because it's going to be cold, or if we're hiking a lot, so dress a little warmer, that kind of thing. And then after dinner, back up, go finish getting ready for the next day, do some laundry, and then hopefully be in bed like around 10, maybe on a good day.
Yeah.
And then get up and get after it again. It's a long season, but it's a good one. So fishing 6 days out of the week, which is you learn a lot spending that much time on the water.
That's a lot. That's a lot to do. Keep yourself engaged and keep yourself on point. Do y'all tie your own flies or?
Some of the guides will tie some of their own flies. It depends on what lodge you work at. The lodge that I worked at previous to this one the past year, the lodge would provide flies. But then, of course, it was recommended to bring your own stuff too, because we'll just get like very basics. But this past lodge, we had to provide, our own flies, which both ways work. All the guides, have their own flies that they like. So yeah, but we go through a lot of flies. If I tied all my own flies, I'd never have time to be on the water.
Yeah, I've got certain ones I buy and certain ones I tie. And, in the winter I'll try different patterns. But so are there rods and reels that you can use it from the lodge or guests can.
Exactly. So as a guest, we provide all the equipment that you need from waders, wader boots, rods, reels, flies, tackle. Like bring base layers, bring a really good rain jacket, really good. Like spend the money for it. It is very well worth it. At that point, it becomes a safety thing, not a, oh, I'm just comfortable because I'm not wet thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, the lodge provides everything. So whether, you're an experienced angler that wants to bring all his own equipment and flies and whatnot, fantastic. Or if it's your first time fly fishing, which is surprising that there are quite a few people that come to Alaska and it's their first time fly fishing.
that's
I'm
crazy.
like, you're gonna get ruined, I'm telling you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what a better, there's not a better place to dip your toes in fly fishing. Oh my goodness.
But you got a lot of repetition there too.
Lots of repetition. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can learn how to do the steps over and over, and then you get back to the stage, you're like, well, it's totally different here.
Yeah.
Not what I'm used to. I'm used to stepping on fish.
I only caught an 18-incher today. It's like, dude, you caught an 18-incher. It's an awesome fish. You kidding me?
Yeah, exactly. Where do y'all stay? That's what I've always wondered is where do the guides stay? Because I've heard tents, I've heard all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so it depends on like what lodge you're working at. So the lodges that I have worked for have been like your big time, like fly out, creme de la creme type lodge. And so we'd have separate cabins. And so like where I stayed this year is a fourplex. So you got two rooms on the front side and two rooms on the back side. And it's kind of off like the beaten path from the main lodge and like where guests and other people stay. And we called it the plywood mansion.
Gotcha.
It was
Yep.
as clean as you wanted to make it.
Yep.
But we got a lot of gear to put in that room, and like drying your waders out at night sometimes can be challenging if it rains multiple days on end. And yeah, so yeah, we kind of stay a little bit separate, but we have plenty of time to interact with guests. And I think that's part of what people really get a kick out of is like, we stay here for 4 months, but we want to invite you into our home for the week. We want this place to be yours and we want to do it with you.
Yeah.
It's not like totally separate.
But that little bit of separation gives you downtime, which you got to have. You just have
Yeah,
to.
buddy.
Yeah, you do. I mean,
Yes.
it's unhealthy to not have that.
Yeah, having some downtime is a big deal. We're on for a majority of the day, and so just a couple hours, in the evening gives us time to recharge. I am one on one with people. That's what my job as a fishing guide entails.
Yeah.
But you definitely got to recharge your batteries.
Yeah, you do. Interesting. All that's interesting up there. I'm probably past my prime to do something like that. If they had something like, well, David, you can guide 2 days a week or 3 days a week, I'd be like, yeah, I might go spend the summer up there. That'd be pretty cool.
It's awesome.
But if it's 6 days a week, I'm probably not ready for that.
It's a grind, and I can tell that I get in shape throughout the season. All of a sudden, those hikes in June come September are much easier than they were in June for some
Exactly.
reason.
Exactly. And you got to have your burrito.
Yeah,
I understand the burrito. That's pretty cool. You just roll up whatever they're making and that's going to be your breakfast. That's a good breakfast.
we eat all the same food that the guests do. So most guides will lose weight while they're guiding in Alaska.
Yeah.
I put weight on because I have 3 meals a day prepared, ready to go, and as many sweets and cookies and everything else that I can eat. And yeah, so I end up putting on a little bit of weight.
Yeah, crash my diet right there for sure.
Yeah.
Pulling a skiff around and get rid of some weight though, won't
Yeah, it's helpful.
it?
It is helpful.
All right, so let's get back down to Texas. I don't want to spend all this time. I do want to have you back on and have a discussion about the lodge life and all that for sure.
Yeah,
But
I'd love to chat Alaska more with you.
yeah, but we'd like to talk about food. We always do, and this gives us, the listener, and me as well, a jump start when we go somewhere. So, like, if we decide I'm going to Port O'Connor, I'm going to fish with Bryson. I need to know where to eat. And I've used some of these lists from people, and all been good every time I've used them. Everything I think has been excellent. And I'm a seafood fan, if nothing else, and that seems like that should be right up your alley down there in Texas. But Bryson, tell us about the best places to grab a bite to eat when we come down to fish with you.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I agree. Eating is just as important as fishing.
Yes.
And I'm on the seafood diet too. I eat seafood and I eat it. Of course. There are some good places to eat around the area. Just a little background on Port O'Connor. There's about 1,000 full-time residents that live here. It does get a little more popular in the summertime. So it's a small, rustic, old school South Texas town, very heavily in, the fishing realm of things. So I always joke, I'm like, there's a handful of restaurants, a couple bars, and there's now two gas stations as of a year and a half ago. There's only one for a while. So it is a small town, but there's some staples. So for, say, like a grab and go meal, there's a really neat place down the street. Everywhere takes you like 2 to 3 minutes to get anywhere. It's a very, very small town. So just down the street is a place called Marty's Landing, which is an old tackle shop. And in there is Mama's Kitchen. And they have a pretty deep, extensive menu, but I've never ordered anything other than pizza off the menu. I'd put their pizza up against any other pizza I've ever eaten. And so our go-to is always the extra large supreme with extra cheese, and I can eat on that for a couple days. And it's more of like this thick. It's not super thick, but it's not thin crust. It's more the kind of that medium where there's actually
Yeah.
something to fill you up. So they have really good pizza. Highly recommend that for like a takeout if you just want to eat it. Your Airbnb or your motel room. There is a more steakhouse type restaurant in town called 5D. They have really good patty melts. They have a big menu, but their patty melts are awesome. And if you're a mushroom person, they have whole fried mushrooms as an appetizer. And they got a couple different dipping sauces. Those are fantastic. If you want to take like a 20-minute drive down the road, there's a place called Bubba's Cajun Seafood. Obviously, it's a Cajun place. It is one of those places where when they ask you, do you want a soup or salad with your meal? Get the stinking broccoli cheddar soup because it is really good. They've got some pretty good Cajun type food and whatnot.
It's called Bubba's.
Bubba's. Yep.
It's got to be good if it's called Bubba's.
Exactly. Yeah. You walk
Yeah.
in and it's all like Cajun theme, Mardi
Oh
Gras,
yeah.
the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And quite often they have like some fresh fish or fresh seafood, depending on time of year and what's in season. There's another place in town. It's a seafood market. It's called Beacon 44. They have some differing hours just because of seasons and what's in and what's not. But it is a really good place if you want to go get like some fresh shrimp or fresh crab or fish. Or my wife used to use it for Christmas gifts, and she would pack a big igloo cooler full of shrimp or whatnot, and like send it to friends. So it's a really good seafood market. They've got like crab dip and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's a cool spot.
That sounds really cool. Yeah.
Because Port O'Connor is such a small town, my father-in-law, every now and then he'll come back in the evening and he literally went down to the shrimp boat that had just pulled in and paid the captain for fish straight off the deck or for shrimp straight off the deck for
Yeah.
a seafood boil. So you can do that kind of thing too.
That's cool.
For like lunch or breakfast or something quick on the go. If you visit Port O'Connor, you're going to end up here quite a few times. It's called Speedy Stop. It's our local gas station, but it's also a grocery store. So whether you need Coke or beer or fresh produce or sandwich fixins, they have everything you need. They also have a really good little cafe. It's not really a cafe, it's more like a walk up bar. And so they'll do like made to order burritos in the morning. They also do pizza, and they'll have quite a few different options on some hot plates, spread out throughout this store for like breakfast and lunch kind of foods. And they have some really, really good stuff there. So definitely worth going to Speedy Stop.
See, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, just
Yeah.
all kinds of good places to eat when you go fishing. And we went to Michigan one time, and I think we had Subway 3 days and ate at a bar one day.
Yeah.
And we were out in the middle of pretty much nowhere. That's all there was one bar and one Subway. And, unless you wanted something like gas station sushi or something, and nobody wants to eat that. But,
Yeah.
they're just what. So coming to some place like that, man, I mean, you talk about, like I said, getting a jump start on something.
Yeah.
This is a great way to do that.
We're big foodies here. Oh, one more I got to mention is Sharky's. It's another local spot in town. It's more of the bar and grill type. So it's going to be a bit more lively than some of the other restaurants. Sometimes they'll have some live music or karaoke night going on. So if you're more into like that more bar and grill, lively atmosphere, that's a good one to check out too. Sharky's.
Yeah. Okay. Sharkies. Okay. I knew that was a bar before you ever said, I mean, what's a bar name? Oh, so good information there. All right, let's move into the last question. We asked this question of everybody, and this came from a listener who just wanted, and I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but he said, I want to hear about the one that got away. And I was like, well, I want to hear about the one that got away from everybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to just know it from one person. I want to know it from everybody we talk to. So tell us your one that got away story.
This is actually a tough question, but I love that it's so open ended. So mine isn't necessarily a specific moment where it was, oh man, it was a big fish and it got away right at the boat. But for people that are familiar with like say fishing in Alaska or just trout fishing, a lot of people think of like that trophy, the classic 30-inch Alaska rainbow trout. And people spend their whole life fishing for it. They are around. You have to fish some of the right waters. Not all the tributaries and streams have necessarily 30-inch fish in them. You got to fish the right waters. But they're a unicorn. They are around, but they're also 30 inches for a reason. Not only can they be picky, but that fish is, at that point, 12 years old, maybe older than that. And so they know every trick in the book to get off of a hook, literally from jumping to burying their face in the sand or in the rocks to scratch the hook out. They're smart. And so I've been working in Alaska for 10 years and I have not had a 30-inch rainbow trout in the net. Many of my fellow guides have caught, or I say have caught, their guests have caught a 30-inch rainbow trout that they've, witnessed. I think I have seen them around. I'm sure that we have probably hooked some of them, but a lot of my fellow guides, they have checked that one off the box, in their first or second season guiding, and I still have not done it. And I don't necessarily believe in like the juju or like jinxing things, but I have always said, and I told one of my employers that I worked for 7 years, I was like, Phil, I was like, the day I catch that 30-incher, I'm out. I'm done. So long, Alaska. And I think it has just come right back around to bite me in the butt. So yeah, that elusive 30-incher I'm still looking for. There were quite a few of them caught at the lodge this summer, and I have not taken part in it.
That really surprises me.
Yeah, so
That really surprises me.
maybe it's my guiding. I don't know. I hope not, but we'll leave that up to everybody else to discuss. But yeah, it's just elusive. Hey, keeps you going back.
So I just look at it, something like that is it's just not your turn yet.
It's not
It's one of those deals where you go so many years without catching one. One, you're not on the right river every single day, or even sometimes the right year.
true.
So that really narrows it down. So when you get on the right river and everything's right, then you'll be like, well, I caught 4 this year.
Yeah.
Something crazy like that. Usually, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But a 30-incher is a whole different animal. Like a 2-footer is a whole different animal than a 20-incher.
It's a big difference. Yeah. And it almost seems like trout go by 2 inches almost. There's a big difference in a 16 to 18, 18 to 20.
Yeah.
A 22 and a 24. You can keep on going. So,
Yeah.
I mean, 2 inches isn't a whole lot, but in terms of just the size of the fish and maybe their smarts and their whereabouts, totally different.
Yeah. 2 inches of length doesn't equal the same in pounds, in width and girth and all that. We measure by length, but if you take all the other things into consideration, it's 2-inch bigger fish is usually a lot more than what it looks like.
It's a different breed. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a different breed.
Well, I wish you luck on getting your 30-incher. I'm sure you will.
I've accepted it. If I see it one day, I'll be over the moon. But if not, hey, you know what? That is okay.
Yeah. After a while, it just becomes something that you put in the back of your head of, I want to catch the big fish, whatever the big fish is, in the Smokies. I want to catch that 20-incher. The Smokers is a huge fish.
Oh gosh.
And you just put it in the back of your head of, okay, well, maybe I'll see it and catch it one day, or blind cast and catch it one day.
And I don't want to get so focused on that fish that I miss out on the other big fish along the way.
Yes.
All the other fun times and good experiences. And
totally agree with that. Well, what do you say we close this thing out? I think this has been a good one.
Let's do it. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So thanks for joining us on this episode. Feel free to share this. And go ahead and share this with your friends and your fishing partners. I think this is going to be a really good one. Lots of good information. Hit the like, click the follow button, sign up for the Southeastern Fly newsletter. And when you get it, forward that on to your fishing friends and let them sign up too. It's available in the show notes. Wherever you're listening to this, should be a link there. If not, send me an email and I will put your name on the list personally. When you get a chance, give us a positive review wherever you're listening to this one. So who is our guest today on this episode about fly fishing the Texas coast and a little bit of Alaska thrown in there too? He's a Middle Tennessee native who I've known since he was in high school. He did grace the cover. We did find out that you indeed did grace the cover of the Orvis catalog. He guides in Alaska in the summer, and the other seasons he's in, like he said, Port O'Connor. And you can find him at brysonstorieflyfishing.com. There'll be some things in the show notes there. Bryson Storie, really appreciate you stopping by, man. This has been nice. Been good to talk to you again.
Hey, I've really enjoyed it, and hope there were some little nuggets in there that some people could pick up on, and I learned some stuff from you too. So,
oh, good.
Yeah, hope they enjoy it.
All right. You just listened to Bryson Storie, fly fishing the Texas coast on Southeastern Fly. See you next time.